Hello, and thank you for joining us for today's exciting webinar entitled 5 Strategies for Finding Information Quickly in SharePoint and Microsoft Teams. Before we get started, here are a few important messages. During the webinar, you are welcome to submit questions via the chat window on your screen. We will try to answer the questions at the end of today's webinar. If we don't answer your questions, not to worry, a Harmony person will answer you via email. For all those who are wondering, we will make a recording of this webcast available to you within a couple of days. You will get a link via email to the recorded webinar. Okay, now on to business. I would like to introduce today's speaker, David Lavender, Harmony Chief Product Officer. David is an experienced marketing and product executive serving in senior roles for a host of enterprise software, mobile, security, and networking companies. David is also an award-winning technology and business writer and public speaker, including many years as a contributor to Fast Company, CMS Wire, and other leading press outlets. David is an international scholar for the Society for the History of Technology. David, please.
Thanks, Maya. Welcome to today's webinar. Welcome aboard, everybody. Talk about the 5 strategies for finding information quickly in SharePoint and Teams. This is a great time to be talking about this stuff with this week's announcements coming from Ignite, Microsoft's big show. We see that looking at some of their announcements, there are a number of issues of interests around finding information, new things in search, and Harmony's right there to provide this capabilities, and we'll be looking at some of these as we go through this. The actual trigger for this particular event today is around Harmony's new 8.2 release, which includes some fantastic new capabilities that I'll be demonstrating a little bit later in this webinar. So just to set the stage for what it is that we're talking about, finding information is a huge problem, especially in today's world where you're just inundated with information for the emails and documents, and you have a lot of options of where to put that information. You could store it in a local drive, you could put it in SharePoint, you can put it in Teams, you could put it in Dropbox, you may even be still putting it in a shoebox at home, for all we know. It's just that there's so many places that you could be putting this information, and when you put it there, you probably had a good idea of why you did that, but tomorrow or next week or next month, you probably will not be able to, or high probability you won't be able to reconstruct that thought process of how you actually got to that information. The second problem is, so one of the keys of being able to find information is not only knowing where you put it, but also classifying it in a way that enables you to search for it later. So for example, using metadata. Metadata is a very a key part of being able to find information. If you classify it correctly, you can find it later on. This is becoming even more important in the Microsoft world, as some of the announcements that came out today, I'll be talking a little bit later around Cortex, which is now called SharePoint Syntax. This is a capability that relies heavily on classification of information and tagging, some of it manually and some of it automatically, but it remains an important element of being able to find information, is putting it in a known location, a central location, and classifying it in a way that makes it easy to find later on. And we're going to show how we use this information to find stuff later on. Now, the problem with finding information is even bigger than it was maybe 6 months ago, because people are working from home more than we expected they would be. A lot of companies have announced, there's an article here, 17 major companies announced employees can work remotely long-term. A few of them saying indefinitely can work from home. This maybe a few months ago seemed to be a temporary problem. People would be back in the office, but as they search for a vaccine for the current COVID virus seems to be taking longer than expected, we can expect people to be at home longer. And these people working at home need to be self-sufficient. There's no one you can knock on the door in the next person's cubicle or the office, or meet them in the hallway and ask them questions about where did do you have that document that I sent you last week, or Do you have that email? Do you remember that email that we got from the client? And you can, of course, reach out to these people through tools like Teams, but it's just not the same as being able to talk to people or walk across the hall and ask somebody. So the problem of finding information is much bigger, and therefore we need better tools to be able to allow people to be self-sufficient, to allow people to be productive, even though they're not in the normal working environment. So before we go on and talk about some of the tools that allow people to be self-sufficient, we like to do a couple of poll questions just to set the stage and gauge the level of difficulty for people finding information in their current work environments. So with that, I'll turn it over to Maya for the two poll questions.
Okay. The first poll question is, what is the longest amount of time it has ever taken you to find an important document or email? Less than 1 minute, 1 to 10 minutes, 11 to 30 minutes, 30 minutes to 1 day, or I'm still looking for it. I see you're still answering. Just a second, and we'll see the results. Yeah, okay.
Okay, so looking at the longest it took, so it looks like about a third. A few people say that it took them less than a minute to find the longest it ever took them to find information. So hats off to you, those 7% who are able to find information that quickly. About a third saying 1 to 10 minutes, 11 minutes to half hour, and half hour to 1 day. So we're looking at a massive amount of time. You know, 2/3 of the people here say that it takes them up to it's taken them up to 30 minutes or longer to find documents. So it certainly seems that this is a problem that we're all experiencing. And before we go on to look at some of the solutions, we have one more poll question just to get an idea of the difficulty of these, your daily experience.
Okay, the second question is, how long does it typically take you to find an important document or email? Again, less than 1 minute, 1 to 10 minutes, 11 to 30 minutes, 30 minutes to 1 day, or I'm still looking for it.
Okay. So we got about a third who said they can find things typically in less than a minute. So you guys are in good shape. And 2/3 say that it's either about over half say it's 1 to 10 minutes, and about 13% say it's 11 to 30 minutes. So we got a sizable chunk, about 2/3 of people who typically say it takes between a minute to up to could be up to half an hour to typically find a document. So this is clearly a problem that many of you are facing, and you're in the right place to hear about some solutions and some tools that you either can obtain or already own that leverage the capabilities that are built into your Microsoft infrastructure that you all have already own. So let's take a look at move ahead. So Harmony helps you find your stuff, and you know the Microsoft tools include a lot of capabilities for finding information. So there's powerful search capabilities, but often those search capabilities aren't enough. So for example, if you do a broad search, sometimes you get so many results that even wading through the responses that you get take a long time. And the issue in many cases is context. You know, you need the right tool at your fingertips in order to find things quickly. You don't want to have to think too much about how you look for information. You just want to be able to reach out where you are and get the information you want flawlessly. The answer is not training or providing tutorials, because nobody wants to do that or has the time to do it. The key is making the right thing the easy thing to do. And that's where Harmony comes in with tools for finding information directly from SharePoint and Teams. And this is exactly what we're going to look at in the next few minutes of, if you are Harmony customers, how to take advantage of those capabilities. And if you're not Harmony customers, how you can take advantage of these by becoming one. So the 5 strategies that we're going to discuss, and in the spirit of under promising and over delivering, which is always a good thing in business. We have 5 strategies, actually we have 6 strategies: navigation, views, filter, sort, and search. Those we'll look at. And there's a 6th one, which is Project Cortex. Again, this is something that Microsoft yesterday renamed SharePoint Syntax, and we'll look briefly at what that is and how that helps you find information as well in the future of finding information and knowledge management in the Microsoft ecosystem. So what I like to do actually as I go through each one of these is not just to show slides, but to literally demonstrate how these work in a real world environment. What I should say is a lot of the capabilities I'm going to show are really things that exist in SharePoint or in Teams that Harmony makes easy because it appears in the place where you spend your work time in Outlook, and it just is in the right context for finding the information when you need to do it. So let's start with kind of the simplest ones, navigating to a SharePoint or a Teams link. So there's actually 4 navigation tools here. We're going to go through, I'll show each one of these in briefly. One of them is open in Harmony, type in the URL, use navigation history, and use of favorites. The use of SharePoint favorites is a really key one. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch over to my email, and you will see this on the screen. This is my Outlook window. It should be familiar to all of you. And on the right side of the screen, you'll see the Harmony window. So this is the Harmony window, which gives you a view into your SharePoint and Teams environments. I can just show you here that you have the ability to look at all your locations, which everything that you personally as an individual have access to, logged into, and you can navigate this easily just by clicking through on the sites. These are SharePoint sites in this case, and I can continue drilling down until I get to specific folders and then actually see the documents and emails that are located in these folders, as you can see here, and all the information around them. So one way is just the kind of brute force, navigate, use the tree navigation, get to those places. That's one way, and that's certainly easy because it's right here in the Outlook window. So if I'm looking at an email and there's a reference here to a document or a reference to another email, instead of having to close this window, switch context, open another application, look for it, I can literally just get to it without losing context, staying in focus in the email window. So how do we do this? So let's take a look at some of the things that make it easy. As you see here, I have an email in front of me. It has an attachment. It also has a link that I've been sent to. So if I want to get to this document, I see this link is in SharePoint, I just right click on it and I've got several options. So one option is I can click on Open in Harmony, and what you'll see on the right side of the screen is the window changes and it goes right to that window, right to that location in SharePoint, and it will find exactly the document that I was looking for. And then from here, I can do all of the capabilities like show a preview, open it in a browser, share it with somebody else, check it out, look at the properties. I can do all the activities because what I'm looking at is a representation of what exists in SharePoint. It's a view into SharePoint shown in my email window. So what I'm actually seeing here is a SharePoint view of the actual information. We don't replicate information. There's no separate Harmony database. This is a view into what you have access to, and according to the access control that's provided. So you're actually logged in here to the sites. So whatever you're allowed to see is what you see here. You don't have access to things that you're not allowed to see. So another way of getting to this information is also I can right click and I can copy the hyperlink, and I can also just paste it into the Harmony window at the top. And I can also navigate that way to get to that information. Of course, I could take that URL and put it in a browser and get to that document through the SharePoint browser as well. So that's one way to navigate. Another way I can navigate here is I can use the navigation buttons. So I can go forwards and backwards of where I was. I can continue going backwards and forwards, and I can continue using the history. If I'm looking actually at a document, I also have the ability to page through. If I want to look at, for example, the properties of this document, and I view the properties of this document, I see the metadata for it. I can use navigation buttons to look at the previous document in that list and see the properties for that document and page up and down through that without having to exit, open another document, right-click on it, and so on. So there's a bunch of really good navigation tools that enable me to be able to get to what I'm looking for without having to exit the screen and look for something else. So let's go back to presentation and see what the next set of tools are. So that was one set of tools that we've got. The next set of tools, we got our views. So some of you may be familiar what views are like in SharePoint. So these like other navigation tools are based on the Microsoft constructs. So what you see here is the same things that have been defined in SharePoint and vice versa. If you define the view here, it'll appear in your browser view automatically. There's no separate database. And this is what makes it really easy, is that you can see things, take advantage of things in context. So views organize information by a predefined set of criteria. So for example, which columns to include in a display, how documents or emails should be sorted, which filter criteria should be used, and also in which categories the information can be grouped. All these things are constructs which help you classify information and therefore make it easier to find and view and to be able to use. So there's some out-of-the-box views that you get without having to define anything. Like you'll see here, I'll show you in a moment, there's one here on this list in the slide, but I'll show it to you in the actual product called My Checked Out Documents, so that you can see all the documents that you currently have checked out in a single view without having to go library by library. And your admin can also create organizational views that automatically appear. So these can be provisioned. And you also can create your own custom view. So it's quite flexible. And what you do is you simply sort and filter the list in a way that's convenient and then give it a name. So very simple to do. Most people probably are not even aware that these capabilities exist, but let's take a quick look and see how this works. Okay, so one of the views you'll see here, I'm looking at a window, you'll see that there's a button here at the top that says View, and I can select, clicking on the arrow shows me all the different views that exist for this particular location. So let's go to another location where I know I've got other views defined. And one of the things I didn't mention before, but I'll talk about now, is favorites. So favorites, you'll see in the list here, these are your SharePoint and Teams favorites. This allows you to highlight and spotlight and put up front and center the libraries, the locations, and the sites that you use often, so you don't have to go looking for them. And this is a super valuable and time-saving thing to be able to do. And you can literally, again, just to make to use these is quite simple. You can select at the top, there's a button that says Edit Favorites, and if I was in one that wasn't already selected as a favorite, it would say Add as a Favorite, and I can organize the favorites by listing which ones appear in which order by moving them up and down on the list. So favorites is a really good tool to be able also to remove the clutter and be able to focus on what you're interested in at the moment without having to go look for it. So back to views. I'm looking at views, and here I click on, again, on the views icon, and I see that I've got a whole bunch of different views. One of them is the My Checked Out Documents that I mentioned before, which comes out of the box. Another one I see here is a bunch of ones called, I'm looking at a legal folder. These are some sample documents that are related to a legal departments documents. So I've got a bunch of different views that have been created. One is around classification, one is around the legal case matter, and several others related to time when documents were created. So let's look at the one under classification. And the idea here is that I have created a metadata, so a metadata field that has a number of values for classifications. Classification is one of the metadata fields that I use, and I can see here that some of the values here are none, Basel 2, classified, and what I'm doing here is I'm organizing the documents according to this this metadata field and the values of that metadata field. And this makes it really easy if I'm looking, for example, for all the classified documents that I have, I can find them right here. It makes them super easy to just find them all in one place. Now, another way to find beyond, and of course, this information can be sorted and we'll look at that in just sort in just a moment. But I can also, of course, do things like organize information by sorting it, and then I can create. This is a new view, so I can do things like, and I'll look at this in just a second, but I can sort and filter and further refine how I want to see the information, and then save that as a personal view simply by clicking on Save View and then giving it a name, and then the next time you'll see it'll appear in the list of views, so that if I have a particular way that I like to organize and see information, I don't have to constantly recreate that and go back and find it and see how that and how to do it each time. So again, features that for the most part exist within SharePoint, but make it super easy to use when you're using it within your Outlook window in the context of the work that you're doing without having to lose context, go out and find it, but having those documents that you need, that you're looking for right front and center so that you don't have to go and search for them. Okay, another tool that's available for finding information is filters and sorts. So there are 3 kinds of filters: filter by tags, filter by columns, and then there's also the ability to sort emails and documents by columns, and we'll just describe each one briefly, and then we'll look at how you use them. So filter by tags, if your library has been configured to use enterprise keywords or manage metadata, you can just filter by tags. You type ahead and you can get the list of them, and I'll show you how that works in just a moment. Filtering by columns is available when you use, there's a variety of supported column types. There's a list of them on our website, but they're typically things like enterprise keywords, manage metadata, date and time, file type, things like that. Then you can filter by columns. And then of course you can save that filter as a view later on so that you don't have to go back and define it. And then lastly, you can sort by columns. And this is very similar to what you have like in Excel, is what you see here in the slide. And I'll show you how this works in a moment. You simply highlight a column header and right click it. And then you select ascending and descending and organize that alphabetically. So a lot of words. Picture tells 1,000 words. So let's go back and take a look at a picture that describes how this works. So the first thing we're going to show is filter by tags. So you see here, there's underneath the text box, there's a icon and I hover over it. It says filter by tags. And when I click on it, I can look for information. So I'm going to look for, and as I type, it gives me all the possible matching options that I can use. I'm going to look for GSA rules. So I'm going to look for all the documents that I have that have the legal case matter as GSA rules. And you see here that tag, here I find all the documents that are listed here. I have the classification listed. I have all the metadata that I have here. And of course, I can always change the metadata, the displayed fields, and reassign them so that I can find those as well. Now, another thing that I can do is, let's remove this filter and go back to what we had before, is to filter by columns. So if, for example, one of the things I want to do here is, filter here, I want to filter this field, you see something very similar to what I have in Excel. I can pick which fields that I want to have here, and I say, let's show everything except the empty ones. You see that all those, I have all that information. And now if this is still confusing, I can right click and order this by alphabetically. So I can do a sort. And if then again, if this is something that I want to save, I can go back and save this as a view so that I can have this set up for information later on. So there's an awful lot of flexibility in arranging the information in such a way that makes it very easy to be able to see that. So very cool. Make it super easy. And these are tools that also, by the way, look very much like things that people are familiar with, again, from things like Excel, sorting by columns, filtering by columns. These are tools that are, they look exactly like they do in other Microsoft products, so people are very familiar how to use them. Okay, search, of course, is the granddaddy of them all. This is the main, the one that I think you probably use most when looking for information. And there's some great new things that are both available in Microsoft 365 with Microsoft Search, and we take advantage of all the capabilities. But one of the problems with search, of course, is, as I described before, is that the power of search is that it's flexible, so it's incredibly powerful. You can just type something and you get all the information that you're looking for. But the power of search is it's kryptonite, because often you don't know where you put something, you don't remember what you called it or when it was created. It could be something, an email or document related to a project. You shared it with a customer, but that's about it. So you start trying some generic terms, and then you get a deluge of responses, and they say, oh, that's too much, and you try and guess some very specific things, and then you get that dreaded no items found message. And finding that iterative process in between of trying to narrow it down is probably what takes the folks who mentioned in the poll earlier between the 1 minute and 30 minutes to find stuff, is that either searching through the very broad list of search responses or trying to narrow down the search to something that's manageable. So you end up, that's where a lot of the wasted time that goes. And if you're at home, it probably gets worse because you even have less resources that you can consult in order to try to find things. So this is what's new. This is big news. Released last week, Harmony 8.2 offers some brand new search capabilities that are being demonstrated today for the first time. And we're going to show those in just a second. We have some capabilities of searching by metadata and also setting the search scope, which are really clever and intuitive and powerful to be able to do directly from your email window. So before I show that, I'm just going to show a couple of the kind of the basic search capabilities that you have, and demonstrate some of the new stuff that is now available. If you have Harmony 8.2, if you're an existing customer, you can download that now. And if you're not a customer, you'll have the opportunity to be able to register for a enterprise trial at the end of this webinar. Maya will give you details about how you do that. So let's going back to folder, and I want to do a search. So one of the things you can, of course, do search for is, I can just do a simple text search. Everyone knows how this works. And, I get a list of text search. It works. I had the right word. I got a limited number of responses. So things look, it was pretty useful for me in this particular case. Of course, I can also do a search by metadata, and this is something which is really powerful. And there's a couple of different things that you can do with metadata searches. So, for example, if I just click in the box, the text box up here, you'll see that I have the ability at the bottom to do a bunch of things here. You see a bunch of metadata fields. Some of these come out of the box. For example, file extension. Say I want to find all the PDF documents, all the Acrobat documents, and I can just literally click on that and then find all the PDF documents. That comes out of the box with Harmony. One of the most powerful features, though, that we offer is this capability of, because we know that email is a big thing that is hard to find when it's stored in SharePoint in a centralized location so that other people have ability to find it. So one of the things we introduced is the ability to use email header metadata to be able to do searches. This does require a little bit of setup from the admin side, but I can, for example, look through my entire, look for an email that was sent to somebody and be able to do that. And I'll show that in just a second. But you'll notice there's another box to the right of the actual search term, and that is the scope. So right now I'm in a SharePoint library, and what I can do is I can search. I can say I want to search for all the emails, say to Fred. Let me see. I don't know if I have any to Fred, but in the current library. So I don't have any in the current library. Okay, no problem. Maybe I want to look in the current site. So now I can search for all the emails to Fred in the current site, and didn't find any there either. Okay, and if I want to look in all locations, I can of course extend this to all locations. Maybe I have here, maybe I can look here for something to, maybe I have one to Annie. We'll see. No, okay, I didn't have any emails in this location to any of those people, but it would return those emails as well. The search scope is context sensitive, which is really powerful. So if I'm located in a SharePoint library, I can search in the current context or a broader context of the current site. All locations gives me all the locations that I have access to, including both SharePoint and Teams locations. So that's really broad. That allows me to go extremely broad. If I'm situated in a different type of place, so say for example, I am in here, and I want to do a search. So again, I have the same capability of doing this. If I go up a level and I do it, it knows now that I'm in a site location, and then therefore it will only allow me to do site or all locations. So it's context sensitive, and what's even greater than that is if I look at, let's go back to my favorites, and I'm going to go now to a team location. So some of these teams, I can actually go to the channels and look in the file locations and channels. So let's look in this one. I'm in it's one of the ones for, these are clients that I work with, and one of the companies is called Glory. And I can similarly search for information within these Teams locations. But oh, look, now Harmony knows, because I'm in a Teams location, the context that I'm offer is the current channel, the current team, all teams and groups, or all locations. Again, all my SharePoint and all my Teams locations. So I can go really broad or be very narrow. So this capability, now let's take a look to see if I have anything here for Fred in this channel. Maybe I have in the current team. No, nothing to Fred in any of these. Maybe I had to Annie. No, didn't have any to Annie either. Okay, so, but this is the, just give it one more try, maybe. Try from Fred in the current team. No, I didn't find any there either. But this gives you the capability of finding the information, whether it's emails or documents, making it very easy to be able to find that information, playing with both the text, the metadata field that you want to search in, and also the search scope and context. That is incredibly powerful because it all resides within a single window, right in the email, and you're able to do that and find all that information without having to do a very broad search or going too wide or just going too narrow and then ending up with no information at all. So let's go back to the slides for a moment. So there's some, putting it all together, we looked at, again, we looked at 5 tools that you have to find information, particularly important when you're working at home. And again, the key is making the right thing the easy thing. So if you're a kind of a typical worker, you're not really interested in learning about how all this stuff works, it's just there and it makes it easy without having to be doing, getting training. I just do want to say, as I said before, we were talking about 5 strategies, but we're going to introduce a 6th one. This is not one that is currently available within the Harmony tool set, but it is coming. This is Microsoft Cortex, which was announced yesterday. There was a kind of a repositioning of this technology. Cortex is a knowledge network within Microsoft 365. So what it does is it uses technology like the Microsoft Graph Search, SharePoint, uses AI to change the way the data is processed. And what you see here is kind of a Microsoft Graph representation about how information like documents, emails, and conversations are related by business topics being things like flight operations and construction operations, survey intelligence, and so on. And underneath the covers, Microsoft builds the connections to it so that if you're looking at information about flight operations, it'll offer you to be able to see information about related content. So here's an example of looking at Microsoft Teams. I'm looking at a discussion, a chat here, and Cortex has identified that Project Core is a topic, and when I hover over it, I get what's called a topic card, and that not only gives me information about what this is about, but it also enables me to navigate to other places, other applications, other artifacts that allow me to find related information quickly. This is really an important capability. I think in yesterday's announcement, Microsoft has repositioned Cortex as SharePoint syntax. So rather than being a broad offering, it's in its first go round, it's going to be an add-on to SharePoint to allow people to find related content within SharePoint, and we'll be taking advantage of that as it becomes available as another way of helping you find information and related information quickly. One last thing I'd like to leave you with is that announcement made yesterday. Harmony has become a charter member of the Microsoft Content Services Partner Program. This is also related to Cortex and to furthering the use of Cortex in enterprises. This is a prestigious partner program of companies that are helping Microsoft get the services available to customers, and we're proud to be charter members and helping people become more productive. So with that, I will turn it over to Maya.
Hi, our last question for you is, would you like a free trial of Harmony? If so, let us know and we will send you one. Okay.
Now, as the numbers are coming in, I will just reiterate that if you are an existing Harmony customer, you can download this now. It's available. If you're not, then you have this opportunity to, even if you haven't signed up here, to go to the website and to be able to register to try it yourself in your own environment.
Okay, and now to the Q&A session. Here's the first question for you, David. How can I get the new search that you showed?
Okay, so that's a perfect question. As I said, you can go literally to the Harmony homepage and to the download page. And if you're an existing customer, you can install it. As I mentioned as we went through this, if you want to take advantage of some of the email search metadata search. There is some admin work that needs to be done to map the email headers to SharePoint columns. There's documentation on the Harmony website that describes how your admin does that, but that is available and you can try that now.
Thank you. Here's another question. Does this new search work only in Office 365 or also in SharePoint on-premise?
So some of the capabilities that require Office 365 will work in Office, will only work in Office 365. Many of the capabilities, the views, the sorts, all the navigation tools, all of those things are available whether you're on-prem or you're using Office 365. So many of the capabilities that you see here, if you're still an on-prem customer, you have the ability to use out of the box.
Thanks. And the last question we'll answer today is, what's the difference between searching in Teams and searching in SharePoint?
Okay, as you probably all know, or some of you may know, Teams, when you have documents or emails stored in Teams, these are really special SharePoint locations. So you're really searching in SharePoint in both cases, but the context for the search and when the user's thinking about what they're looking for is very different. So when you're searching in Teams, your construct, your context is the channel that you're in, the conversation you're having with people around a given topic. And therefore, we have the ability in Teams to allow you to search within a particular channel, or maybe you don't know what particular channel it was, but you know it was within a given team, so you want to search within that team, or go broader. When you're searching in SharePoint, your constructs are different, and you're looking maybe at a folder, you're looking at a site, you're looking at a location. Again, you're depending on how you organize your information, but the way you set up the hierarchies allows you to set the search scope broad enough so you get the answers without going too broad and having to wade through many irrelevant responses. So from the user perspective, it looks like magic. From under the covers perspective, we're using the constructs that are in Teams and in SharePoint to allow you to display the hierarchy in the way that the information is organized in your organization so that people can find that information quickly.
Thank you, David, for a great presentation, and thank all of you for joining us today. You will receive an email with a link to view this webinar again within a couple of days, and we look forward to meeting you again at our next webinar.